What's up, guys? JB here with Marketing 360. I have Andrew Elkins here who has just a ton of experience when it comes to digital marketing and working with small businesses to help them grow every single day. He's a director of marketing here at Marketing 360 and Madwire and has just been done an unbelievable job and has so much experience, literally probably worked with thousands of small businesses at this point. And so I have him on today to talk about really conversions and results and how those come last a lot of times, and that's okay. And what you need to be thinking about so that when those results come, they're really good, and that's what the conversation is today. So Andrew, good to have you.
All right, I'm happy to be here, JB, as always.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, why don't you start breaking it down? Where do you start in terms of getting those conversions and results that you want? We all want that right away, but there's so many things that need to be done in order for that to happen. Maybe you can walk us through it.
Well, yeah, and I think that, that's obviously what people come to us for often, is looking for the end result. And sometimes you have to think about it in terms of what I have to do to prepare to get there. Do I have everything in place that's going to make that possible? And here at Marketing 360, especially, we talk about what that entails, right? And it starts with having a website that looks professional, that's ready to convert, and then having all the things in places that will drive people to that website in the first place, right? To have your your campaigns, all those things mapped out before you start running them to your site, and then have things like your CRM and your email marketing tools set up to nurture those leads once they come in through the door as well. Because not every lead is going to turn into a conversion, but you want to make sure that you have the tools in place to do your best chance to get those to convert, even if it's not right away.
Yeah, it's so critical. I mean, I think when we all step back and we just think about ourselves, like when we're going to buy a product or service, what are the things that we often go through during that process? And for me, it's like you do some research and you're going to look at multiple websites. So that's where the design is really important, right? You want to have a good site that has good messaging so that you're in the game. That's kind of phase one. And then phase two, especially with the younger demographic, before they fill out a lead form or they make a purchase or anything, they do like additional research on your reputation, and they're going to check your reputation, see if there's reviews on your product or your service. Then most of them are also going to check you out on social media. I know my daughter would do this. She'd look at you on Instagram. Are you doing anything on Instagram? See if you're professional, what your content looks like. And so it's almost like when you're hiring an employee, you do a background check, you do an interview, you do all this stuff before you hire them. And to a certain extent, this is the process us as consumers are going through before we buy a product or service. And so it's so important to have all those things like very strong so that you're in the game and ultimately hopefully win the deal, win the lead, win the sale at the end of the day. But so many small businesses, we just want leads. We want sales right now. And I'm guilty of this too, running a company. That's what you think about, but you don't think about the whole journey and do I have the best reviews? Do I have the best, look on social media, et cetera? So maybe you can speak to that and some of your experience and thoughts on that.
Sure, and it's easy to get caught up in that and want to jump the gun and jump right into that lead generation part. But you're absolutely right, and I think your analogy about interviewing a potential employee is exactly what people are doing here too. My son, being the younger demographic, does the same thing as well too. But you want to make sure that you're covered in every single way, so that you're building your reputation, your real estate online, and you have all those things, like I said, everything from your social media presence to especially your reviews, all these things in place that give people a chance, that give people the confidence to deal with you in an interactive storefront, right? You don't have the benefit of them coming in and meeting you in person and seeing how your setup is. This is your presence, right? This is your online store and your online reputation outside of that. And you have to make sure those are all in place if you're going to have any chance of having someone trust you with their money. They don't know you. This is all they know about you. So make sure you have your best foot forward in every one of those different channels.
Absolutely. What would you say is, one of the most important channels to work on pre-conversion? What do you think has maybe the biggest impact on really driving more conversions at the end of the day if you're strong in that area?
I think that the biggest part is your reputation. I think without a doubt, right? You can drive as much traffic as you want to that site. We can absolutely do that for you as well too. But if your reputation is not in place, if there's not that final push to build that trust with that potential customer, they're going to go somewhere else. I mean, they have the time. They can research it anywhere on any device. Whenever they're going to do it, especially if it's a bigger purchase in particular. So if your reputation is not where it needs to be, or just not out there where as much as it needs to be, where just people don't know about you, it's almost like credit. It's almost worse to have no reputation than to have a bad reputation, right? So if you're not out there showing everybody who you are, with user-generated reviews and the icons on your site to make sure, the trust badges we talk about all the time that give people a reason to trust you, doing their job, then you're gonna have a hard time closing that sale, particularly when everybody else has those in place.
I would totally agree with that. We say a lot of times here, you need traffic and trust, and that equals sales. And it's almost like an equation. If you have a 10 traffic and a 0 trust, that's 0 sales.
Yeah.
And 10 times 0 is 0. But if you have 10 traffic and 10 trust, that's 100% sales. You're crushing it. And so I see so much failure in this area when I look at small businesses, especially like e-commerce stores. I mean, there's so many products that literally have no product reviews on the product page. I mean, that's killing you. You're better off giving your product away to 5 people for free in exchange for a review because of the amount of sales that'll generate on the back end. And it's the same thing with services. If you do roofing, if you do, kitchen remodeling or whatever it is, people, before they fill out that lead form or call you, they're checking your reviews. And so it's so important to have reviews, and you just don't see enough attention to detail on that with small businesses. So I love that tip. What would be the second most important thing?
You want to make sure, so if you have those reviews in place, I think you want to make sure, we talked a little bit about it at the beginning about the professional looking website. This is your other opportunity to kind of show them who you are and that you're not some fly by night business that's going to run away with their money. Whether it's an e-commerce store, you're trusting them to deliver something sight unseen to their house and not run away again and not steal their money. If you're a certain local service, it's almost more important. You're about to let that person into your house, right? So this is something that has to build confidence as well. If your site is not well designed and easy to use and doesn't give that message right up front, and then highlight some of those reviews and trust things that we talked about earlier, then you're going to have a difficult time closing it as well. It is a reflection of your business. It'd be the same thing if you had a shoddy looking storefront, physical one. It's the same thing with your website, and maybe even more so. If you can't take the time to put it in the work into your website to make it look professional, then why would I think that you're going to do that with whatever you're working with for me, right? I mean, think about if you had, like I said, an actual storefront and you had a sign and 3 of the letters didn't work on that sign, they wouldn't light up, then that looks like someone you do not want to do business with.
Yeah, so important. I mean, it's like I always say, your website's your best salesperson. And so make sure that it's a good one. If a salesperson showed up to your door with, cut off jeans and no shoes on and, hair was all jacked, unless they were selling products that related to that somehow, you probably would lose some trust. And then if you asked them questions and their response was like, yeah, I'm not sure, you probably wouldn't buy from them, right? So if your website isn't answering the questions people have, if it isn't easy to find the information, if it doesn't look professional, then it's hurting you. And I'd say the number one power tip with websites right now is just mobile. Like, there's still like a lack of mobile usability, I think, out there. And so make sure that your site is really good on the phone. And, the biggest thing is just compare it with your competitors, like ultimately, if you try to be unbiased, look at your site, look at your competitors' sites, who would you pick, and make a bullet list of things maybe they do better than you that you can tighten up, and that'll give you some action items that you can use to improve your site. So absolutely. So you got website, you got reviews to build trust, and both of those things really build trust. What would be the next thing in terms of building that trust?
I think that you want to make sure you have a clear and easy process on that site to drive to that particular to that checkout portion of it. And then once that it makes sense that whatever kind of security things are, you want to make sure your site is secure first of all as well too. You have secure socket layer set up, but you want to make sure that it's easy and it makes sense when they get to that part where they actually give you their information or purchase that product.
Yeah, I think that's key too. And maybe you can touch on, I think, social proofing too now in it, because it's kind of like the looking for reviews, but maybe you can touch on the value of the social proofing, which is, are you frequently posting? Is the content professional? Does it look pretty good? Is your profile optimized?
Sure.
You don't necessarily have to have like 1 million followers, but do you seem like active on social media? Right. Maybe you can touch on that, because I think that's pretty huge now too.
Sure. If someone even if they visit your site then leave, right? Because we know that happens a lot too, right? Where they don't necessarily convert on the first time, or they find you first somewhere before they get to your site, and they happen to research your social profile. If you just have a Facebook post from 9 months ago and haven't updated, it's not even relevant anymore. Again, that speaks to someone who's not really putting that time and effort and care into their business. So why would you think they would do that with you as well? So you want to make sure, right, you're the same way your site is set up professionally and it looks that way. Your Facebook, your social profiles to look the same way too. Make sure it matches your brand. There's some consistency with what's on your site. And then make sure again that you're using it frequently and that you're replying to any kind of questions or things that come up on that site as well too. People will see that, and again, it just gives you that kind of genuine feel to something that you wouldn't get otherwise, especially if you have no other way to kind of see it for yourself. You're taking that, it's easier for people to believe organic kind of questions and answers than they would to something that's obviously kind of predetermined in place there.
Yeah, actually, you hit on a great point there in terms of checking your messaging and things like that, because the younger demographic is, oftentimes going to find you on social media and send you a message, and that's how you're going to get a lead.
Yeah.
And in some cases, they're going to go to your site, and you may even have like a lead form there, and they're not going to fill that out. They're going to then see if you're on Instagram, and if you are, they're going to direct message you, because that's just how they're comfortable doing it. That's how they communicate with their friends. So they're going to ask you for things on direct messenger, and so if you're not active, first off, you're not even getting the message, because they're just going to go to the next business that does appear to be active, or you are just not going to see it, because they're going to send you a message just going to sit there. And so these are leads that are hot leads that you could take advantage of, and it's about just embracing where it's going. So your website nowadays, like you have your main website, but then you have these little microsites, and you have Google My Business microsite, you have your Instagram page microsite, you have your Facebook page microsite, and these are all websites that people are finding you on essentially and trying to communicate with you on. And so if you're not active there, you're missing out on a big opportunity.
100%. And I think it's important to understand that they're not necessarily, you can't wait for them just to come to you. You have to kind of make sure that you're branded and showing in places where they're going to be. And I think that's where the social channels are really important in that aspect too. And we talk about a lot when you get deeper into metrics about assisted conversions, right? That oftentimes it's not just one channel that drives that conversion, that end game of the lead, but there's multiple touch points along that route. And that could be your website, it could be paid search, it could be then organic search and social, all fitting to ones, and that all lead up to one conversion. So they're all very important that there's some consistency across the board, and that you're paying attention to all those things, because that's what your customers are paying attention to.
Yeah, it's like the old rule of 7, right? Where you need to hear a radio ad 7 times before you buy, or see a TV commercial 7 times before you buy. And that still exists, but now it's in different channels. So if somebody sees your website, then they see you on Instagram, then they actually do see an ad, then they get an email from you. Those are all touch points. And so if they see you 7 times on these different channels, that builds the amount of trust that's needed for that final conversion to take place. So like you said, it's like links in the chain. And if you don't have one of those links very strong, the chain could be broken and you miss out, right? And they go with somebody else. And so that's why it's important to have all those channels and be fully optimized there. So I love that.
Yeah, 100%.
What are the tips in terms of, we have this big funnel, that we're driving traffic into it, and we want as much to come out the other end as customers as possible. And there's all these potential leak points. Is there anything that we haven't hit on, in your mind that could be something you need to think about in terms of having a really strong funnel?
When you think about a funnel, right, it's exactly what it is, right? You want to narrow that scope as you get closer and closer with the additional points. So you want to make sure you're first to anticipate. You try to kind of step outside and anticipate the kind of information that your customer would be looking for, and then you're covering all that. But then to use the kind of data that you get with people coming in and shrink that funnel by asking the right questions and pointing them to the right pages or whatever that may be, or different channels along that route. So the more specific you can be as that funnel, as you go through that funnel, the better, until you're finally you're kind of holding their hand through that whole process and showing them the first piece of information they need to get started, and then they get more and more as they go along till they get to the point where this is exactly what I was looking for, and then you make it easier for them to give you their money, give you their business with a site that builds trust, with all these different things we talked about to build trust, all on that whole right. You can't forget about those as you get more narrow in the funnel too. And then once they do convert, you make sure that you follow up with them after that and continue to build that trust once that becomes a lead or a sale. Through email campaigns or through text campaigns, to make sure you're staying on top of that lead once it becomes that for you too. Again, giving them the information they need and driving them the direction that you want them to until they land where you want, and make that final decision about whether they're going to convert or not.
Yeah, and that's, as you're talking there, I'm just thinking that's what is so important about just the content and the creative, and there's a lot of it, you need content and creative all over your website. You need it on social media, you need it in your emails. And so it's so critical that when you think about it, the funnel is really actually kind of like 3 phases. Once you pour the traffic in, you have this phase where you're trying to build enough trust to get people even to become a lead. So you're like marketing just to get them to become a lead, and there's creative for that. There's trust builders for that. Once they actually become a lead, though, they're not a customer yet, right? They're just a lead. So now you need to market them in that phase post conversion so that they could hopefully become a paid customer. And that's where the nurturing comes in, following them on social media, sending them email nurture track campaigns, and what's the content and the messaging there to get them motivated to make that final leap and become an actual customer. And then once they become a customer, now you have potential repeat purchase marketing that you can do and ongoing marketing to build customer loyalty and get referrals and get reviews. So, there's just so much to it. And so it's like, the topic at the beginning here that, that you presented, which is we're all thinking about that end result, but we really need to be thinking about everything that needs to be done in order to get that result. And there's a lot to it. So, Marketing 360 is a great solution, guys. If you're looking for a platform that does everything that we're talking about in one place, that makes it easier, right? If you have to do all this stuff in all these different places, that gets pretty complex. So being able to do it all in one platform obviously is a no-brainer. So check that out if you guys haven't looked at it. But what are some other tips, Andrew, just in general from small business? Maybe some, 3 takeaways, your top 3 tips for small businesses out there today, whether it's sales or marketing. It doesn't even have to be sales and marketing. Maybe it's just like leadership or whatever. But just to close it out today, what are your top 3 tips for small business owners that are watching today?
Okay, top 3 tips is one, look around and see what other people are doing. If in your industry, see what's working for them, what you like and what you don't, and apply that to what you do. Try to learn as much from others without having to make those mistakes yourself. 2, optimize and automate as many things as you possibly can. As you talked about it a minute ago, it's almost impossible to do all those things yourself outside of something like Marketing 360 platform. I've done it before. It's just too much work. You'll drop balls 100% guaranteed. And 3, make sure that you put your customers first. Make sure you're getting back to them right away. Make sure you're showing them that they're important, or they will go somewhere else where somebody else does. So you do those 3 things, and I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be successful. That's what we see from our clients, the people who are engaged. Make sure they're paying attention, and make sure they're looking at their data and listening to their customers and building their business around that, and kind of not relying on what they think they know, but trusting what they're seeing from their data. Then they're going to be successful.
Boom. Love it. All right. I appreciate it, Andrew. Thanks for the tips today. And everybody, thanks for watching. Like the video if you like it, share it with your friends, and follow us for more content like this down the road. Happy marketing.
Yeah, my pleasure, JB. Anytime. Thank you.
Yeah. See ya.